It began on a summer morning in Australia, December 1st, 1948. Adelaide, a peaceful city with sprawling beaches and a laid-back way of life. Around 6:30 a.m., a man named John Lyons was walking along Somerton Beach with his wife. He suddenly noticed a man lying motionless on the sand near a seawall. The man was dressed impeccably, a white shirt, a red tie, tailored trousers, hardly the attire of someone who'd been swimming or casually strolling by the shore. John thought he might be drunk, perhaps sleeping off a long night. But as he approached, an eerie feeling crept over him. The man wasn't breathing, not a single movement. He was dead. The police were called quickly. They examined the body, and right from the start, things began to spiral into confusion. The man appeared to be around 40 to 45 years old, physically fit, fair-skinned, with chestnut hair streaked with gray. There were no obvious injuries, no stab wounds, no gunshots, no signs of a beating. His pockets held no identification, no wallet, no letters, not even a scrap of paper with a name. All they found were a few peculiar items. A pack of Kenzitas cigarettes, a rare brand in Australia at the time, a bus ticket from central Adelaide to Somerton Beach, and a tiny piece of paper, carefully hidden in a secret pocket sewn into his trousers. A pocket so subtle it could have easily been missed. That scrap of paper bore just 2 words: Tamam Shud. Do you know what it means? In Persian, Tamam Shud translates to finished or ended. It had been torn from the final page of a famous book of poetry, the Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam, an ancient Persian poet. The police were baffled. Why would a man found dead on a beach carry this? What did it signify? A message? A coincidence? They decided to trace the clue back to the book, but the deeper they dug, the murkier things became. An autopsy was conducted soon after, and this is where the case truly veered into the unimaginable. The forensic experts found no trace of common poisons in his system, no arsenic, no cyanide, no sleeping pills. His heart, liver, and stomach all appeared normal, except for one thing. His spleen was 3 times its usual size, and there was slight bleeding in his stomach. Some experts speculated he might have been poisoned with an extremely rare substance, something undetectable by 1948 science. But there was no hard evidence to prove it. He died as if he simply stopped living. No reason, no cause. Then they examined his clothing. Every label had been removed, no brand names, no origins. But one small detail stood out. In his coat pocket, they found an orange thread and a needle. Had he been mending his own clothes? Or had someone deliberately erased every trace of his identity before his death? The police began to wonder. Was this a suicide, a murder, or something bigger? A few weeks later, a new discovery sent the case into even stranger territory. The police released details to the press, and a man from Glenelg, a nearby town, came forward. He said that on the day the body was found, he'd discovered a copy of the Rubaiyat abandoned in his car. When he opened it, he noticed the final page had been torn out. The police checked. The Tamam Shud scrap matched the missing piece perfectly. But the real intrigue lay on the back cover of the book. There, scribbled in handwriting, was a series of numbers and letters. And beside it, a phone number. What was this? A code, a message, or just random markings? The police traced the number. It led them to a woman named Jessica Thompson, who lived just a few hundred meters from Somerton Beach. Jessica, also known as Jestin, was a 27-year-old nurse. When questioned, she insisted she didn't know the man in the photographs of the body. But something odd happened. When the police showed her his face, she nearly fainted. She trembled. Her eyes welled up, but she steadfastly maintained she had no idea who he was. They asked about the Rubaiyat. She admitted she'd once owned a copy and had given it to a man named Alfred Boxall, a lieutenant she'd met during World War II. The police tracked down Boxall, and to their surprise, he was still alive, still in possession of the book Jessica had given him, with its Tamam Shud page intact. So where had the torn copy they found come from? Jessica became a focal point of suspicion, but she offered no further answers. Rumors swirled that she'd once told friends she knew the man's identity, but would never reveal it. Years later, when her daughter was interviewed, she dropped a chilling detail. Her mother had studied Russian and might have worked as a spy during the Cold War. Not far from where the body was found lay Woomera, a secretive Australian rocket testing range. Could the Somerton man have been a spy, assassinated in the shadows? Or just an ordinary man with a secret no one could unravel? By 2009, scientists attempted to analyze DNA from the man's hair and blood, but the technology of the time couldn't provide clear answers. In 2021, his body was exhumed again, with hopes that modern advancements might crack the mystery. Some researchers believe he could be Carl Webb, an Australian engineer, though no definitive proof supports this. And that cryptic code? Dozens of experts have tried to decipher it, but none have succeeded. Jessica died in 2007, taking her secrets to the grave. The Somerton man remains nameless, faceless, and without a cause of death. So, what do you think? Was this the suicide of a lonely man? An international intelligence hit? Or just a string of coincidences so bizarre they defy belief? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. On December 4, 1872, a crew aboard the ship Dei Gratia was drifting in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when they spotted a shadowy vessel aimlessly bobbing on the waves. No flag, no distress signal, just a wooden ship silently adrift in the vast expanse of the sea. As they drew closer, they recognized it as the Mary Celeste, a small but well-known merchant ship of its time. But what sent chills down their spines wasn't the ship itself. It was the eerie, deathly silence that enveloped it. Not a sound, not a soul in sight. The captain of the Dei Gratia, David Morehouse, decided to board the vessel and investigate. And what he found then would leave you wondering, what in the world happened here? Stepping onto the deck, Morehouse and his sailors immediately noticed that the Mary Celeste wasn't sinking or severely damaged. The sails were still up, the ropes neatly secured, and the cargo, 1,701 barrels of alcohol, remained untouched in the hold. But then they stumbled upon the first strange detail. There wasn't a single person on board. 10 people, including the ship's captain, Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah Briggs, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 seasoned crewmen, had vanished as if they'd evaporated into thin air. There were no signs of an attack, no blood, no scattered belongings. It was as though they'd been there 1 second and gone the next. As they searched the ship, they uncovered a few clues that made the mystery even more unsettling. In the dining area, food was still on the table. Bread, cold cuts, even a cup of tea that was still warm. A wall clock was still ticking, its hands seemingly frozen on the last moment those people had been aboard. In Captain Briggs's cabin, the ship's log was found, with its final entry dated November 25th, just 9 days before the ship was discovered. The entry noted the ship's position, calm weather, and nothing out of the ordinary. So what had happened in those 9 days? And why was the ship drifting hundreds of miles off course with no one at the helm? Perhaps the strangest detail of all was the absence of one critical item, the Mary Celeste's lone lifeboat. It was gone. This led some to speculate that the crew had abandoned ship. But why? If they were in danger, Why were there no signs of panic? Clothes, personal belongings, even the sailors' tobacco and pipes were left behind untouched. Then came an even more chilling discovery. Under Captain Briggs's bed, they found his sword, stained with what looked like dried red marks. Some claimed it was blood, but no one could say for sure. And if it was blood, whose was it? With no bodies or evidence of a struggle, what story did that sword hold? The Mary Celeste was towed to Gibraltar for an official investigation, and, from there, a flood of bizarre theories began to emerge. The first theory that came to mind was pirates. But if pirates had attacked, why was the cargo untouched? Why were there no signs of a fight? Another idea was mutiny, that the crew had turned on the captain, killed him, and fled. Yet Captain Briggs was known as a fair man, well liked by his crew, and there was no evidence of any conflict. Some suggested a massive storm had forced everyone into the lifeboat. But the ship's log recorded stable weather, and the vessel itself was intact, not the kind of state you'd expect after a storm. Then came the most chilling theory, one that many at the time believed, something otherworldly. Some speculated that the Mary Celeste had encountered a giant sea monster, a massive squid or an unknown creature, that terrified the crew into abandoning ship. Others spoke of a curse, claiming the vessel was haunted by the spirits of those who'd perished at sea. It might sound far-fetched today, but in the 19th century, when the ocean was still a vast unknown, such tales weren't uncommon. The investigators in Gibraltar tried to piece together an answer. They inspected the barrels of alcohol in the cargo hold and found that 9 of them had leaked. Some theorized that the escaping fumes might have poisoned the crew, driving them into a panic and onto the lifeboat. But if that were true, why didn't anyone smell alcohol when they boarded? Why had the crew left all their belongings behind? Another idea was that Captain Briggs feared an explosion from the alcohol vapors and ordered an evacuation. Yet there were no signs of fire or an explosion, and the ship was found drifting calmly. Every theory had holes, and the deeper they dug, the more baffling the case became. In the end, the Mary Celeste was returned to its owners, but its reputation as a ghost ship had spread far and wide. No one wanted to work on it anymore. Over the years that followed, it changed hands repeatedly before being deliberately wrecked in 1885 for insurance money. But the story didn't end there. More than a century later, people are still searching for traces of the 10 souls who vanished from that ship. Some say they perished in the lifeboat, swept away by the waves. Others believe they survived, but for some reason never returned. There are even rumors that on quiet nights at sea you can still hear the faint cries of a child, perhaps little Sophia, echoing in the distance. So what's the truth? What really happened to the Mary Celeste? Was it an accident, a crime, or a mystery beyond our comprehension? No one knows for sure. I'm 22 now, and this happened about a year and a half ago. I'd just moved into my first apartment and was still settling in. The front door locked automatically when it closed, so I stepped out to the apartment complex's entrance to grab my mail while chatting with my boyfriend Milo on the phone. I came back, sat on my bed, and started opening letters while still talking. Then I dropped my phone and it slid under the bed. I got down on the floor, stretched out to grab it, and something caught my eye. There was someone under my bed. My eyes widened and I fought the urge to scream. The guy was lying there facing away from me, his head tucked into his chest so I couldn't see his face. And he didn't see me either. My mind raced as I tried to stay calm. I picked up my phone and said, "Sorry." I dropped it. "I'm gonna take a shower and call you back." The bathroom was right next to my bed, so I rushed in, quietly locked the door, turned on the shower, and climbed out the window. My apartment was on the first floor. I called the police and they told me to wait nearby but across the street, keeping an eye on anyone leaving the building. It was summer, still light out, so I hid behind a car across the road, staring at my open bathroom window and the entrance. I called Milo again, and he rushed over just before the cops arrived. I gave them my keys, and they went inside. Minutes later, 2 officers came out dragging a thin, exhausted-looking man with wild eyes. He didn't try to run. The police stood by me, comforting me as I trembled and cried. They explained that the guy had been standing outside my bathroom door with one of my kitchen knives, waiting for me to come out. Somehow he'd slipped in while I was at the mailbox and hid under my bed. He meant to hurt me. Turns out, he was homeless and got sent to a psychiatric hospital. Milo moved in with me the very next day. When I was around 11, I had a steady babysitter named Mara. My older siblings, Theo, 17, and Lila, 18, were too cool or too busy with school to watch me. Mara was their age, but I don't think her family had much money, so she babysat me almost every weekend instead of doing typical teenage stuff. We lived in a decent cul-de-sac behind a bigger neighborhood. The deeper you went, the nicer the houses got. Mara lived closer to the main road where the homes weren't as fancy, but still fine. To me, she wasn't just a babysitter. She was my best friend. We did so many fun things together, and I could tell she really cared about me. One Saturday night, my mom, Nora, was planning the week ahead, but for the first time, Mara couldn't babysit. She had her first prom, super excited because a guy she'd crushed on for years finally asked her out. She told me all about him since she started high school. Mom and I were thrilled for her, and I saw Mom slip her extra cash. Mara's eyes teared up as she hugged us both and left. Since it was the 90s, babysitters came through word of mouth. Mom heard from another parent about a girl named Tessa, who'd just moved back with her parents after school and lived down the street from Mara. Mom called Tessa and she eagerly agreed to babysit me that Saturday. She asked odd questions like how tall I was and what I looked like, but Mom brushed it off, saying, "Wow, she's so thorough," to my dad, Victor. I was nervous. Mara had been my only babysitter for years. If she couldn't make it, my parents usually canceled their plans, but this was a company party honoring Dad, so they had to go. A few days before Tessa's gig, I begged Mom to call Mara. I wanted to see her in her prom dress. Mom kept saying I couldn't go, but I insisted, so she called Mara and handed me the phone. "Hey Mara, you okay?" I asked. "I'm fine," she said. "Can I come see you in your dress Saturday?" "Sure, I'll be doing my hair, but you can come after, maybe 5:30. Tell your mom to call first." "It won't be Mom. It's Tessa." Silence. "Wait, why can't you babysit?" Mom found Tessa instead. A long pause. "Okay, sweetie, it's fine." She hung up quickly. The next day I got home from school and saw Mom shaking her head after a call. "Poor Mara," she said. "Her date ditched her. They fought, and she wants to know if she can still babysit Saturday." I felt bad canceling Tessa, but I picked Mara. We had a blast as usual. I didn't bring up prom to avoid upsetting her, but later she asked, "Want to play dress up?" We did each other's hair, wore Mom's dresses, and took Polaroids. With her camera, my best night as an 11-year-old. Mara went to community college, and by the time I hit a 4-year school, I didn't need babysitters. We kept in touch a bit, but drifted apart. Then last weekend, I ran into Mara at a bar. She was wasted and looked rough, thin with marks on her arms. It broke my heart. She'd been one of my favorite people. I sat with her and her face lit up. She hugged me tight. I knew you'd turn out great. Look at you, all grown and gorgeous. You look great too, Mara. No, I don't, but it's okay. We reminisced, and she drank more, slipping into a daze. She was with friends, so I wasn't too worried, but I couldn't leave her. She was so happy to see me. When it was my turn to share a story, I said, "Remember that jerk who ditched you for prom, so we had our own with photos?" "He didn't ditch me," she slurred. "The substitute babysitter was a sick mouse. When I was little, she hit me, molested me, threatened me, locked me in closets. Then she'd bring her boyfriend over to do the same. She said she'd kill my family if I told, and I'd end up in an orphanage. She took pictures too. I blocked it out until you said her name that day. It all came back. I should have told someone, but it's too late. I didn't want people to know. They'd see me differently. I regret so much not knowing what else she did." She downed her drink, hugged me, and stumbled off with her boyfriend, acting like she hadn't just dropped a bomb. It hit me. The call with Tessa, Mara's silence when I mentioned her, how she stayed with me every weekend until I didn't need her. Some might say Mara should have spoken up, but she was just a kid, an incredible one. She gave up her prom to save me every weekend after that, to protect me. She was my guardian angel. Sadly, she didn't have her own Mara, and that kills me. If I ever meet Tessa, I'd rip her throat out for ruining the most amazing person I've ever known. This happened in the fall of 1993 when I was 20, before college. I worked the night shift in the material prep room at a plastics factory, the only woman there. My male coworkers doubted me at first, but I proved myself and earned their respect. It was tough work, but it got me in the best shape of my life. Around that time, my abusive ex-boyfriend dumped me. He'd been verbally and physically cruel, a raging alcoholic. That probably explains why I ended up in this mess. I'd just finished my shift at 1:30 a.m. My car was low on gas, so I stopped at a local station to fill up. While pumping, a woman my age, Isla, approached, looking scared. She said she'd fought with her boyfriend, walked to the station to call a friend from the payphone, and on the way a car stopped. Guys inside catcalled and harassed her. She nodded toward a pale green car, maybe a Caddy or Lincoln, parked by the trash cans with 2 or 3 figures inside. She said they'd threatened her, and she was too scared to call her friend. Isla looked neat, sober, not high or drunk, just genuinely terrified. I didn't hesitate. I'd finished pumping, so I told her to hop in. I'd drive her home. It was a quiet weeknight, no traffic. I pulled out of the station and asked where she lived. She kept twisting in her seat, checking for the car. I told her to buckle up, but she ignored me, still looking. A few blocks later, she started asking weird stuff. "Where's your money? Where's your purse? I need cash. Give me some." My stomach sank. I had this chick in my car, and now she was trying to rob me? But it didn't add up. I drove a beat-up 1985 Chevette nicknamed Shitbox, wearing an old tee, jeans, and work boots. I didn't look loaded, mostly 'cause I wasn't. She twisted again, yelling, "There they are." I checked my rear view. Sure enough, the green car was behind us. Then she giggled and bounced in her seat. "My boys are gonna you up, they're gonna you up." She laughed like a maniac, rummaging in the back for a bag or wallet, describing all the awful things her boys would do. If I were smart, I'd have driven to the police station or called them from the gas station and waited. But that didn't hit me until later. In the moment, I was just pissed. 3 things clicked. An intersection was ahead with cars waiting to cross. The light turned yellow. I had a spare box cutter from work in the driver's side door, and this nutcase still wasn't buckled. I floored it through the yellow light. As it turned red, I glanced back. The green car got stuck as traffic moved. Isla screamed and I slammed the brakes. She smashed into the dash, then the windshield with a sickening crack, flopping back into her seat. I yanked the box cutter, pointed it at her face, and screamed something like, "Get the carter out before I cut your face off and make you eat it." Between my yelling and the blade, she panicked, blindly grabbed the handle, and opened the door. I shoved and punched her until she tumbled onto the curb. I sped off, screeching around the next turn with her door still flapping, made a few more turns in case the green car caught up, then stopped to shut the door. I drove across town to the highway and home. 5 minutes on the highway, I started shaking. I pulled over to calm down, then drove to my sister Aria's place where I was crashing after the breakup. I told her everything. She hugged me tight, while yelling I was an idiot for not going to the cops. I'd never been so glad to be chewed out. When I was 6, about 21 years ago, my dad Zane and I lived with my grandparents. My parents had me as teens. Dad got full custody since he stayed with them, while Mom bounced between random friends' houses. I was their only granddaughter. 5 months after Grandpa died of cancer, Grandma Ivy took me to McDonald's for lunch on a Saturday while Dad worked. I was stoked, like any 6-year-old. We ordered, sat down, and were the only ones eating inside. About 10 minutes later, a scruffy guy walked in, ordered, and sat at a table diagonally across from us on the left. Our area was middle to upper class, so he stuck out. Ivy faced away, but I could see him clearly. Mid-50s, wild white hair and beard, dirty blue shirt and white tee, sandals. I still remember it like yesterday. Under his table, I saw something dark pink and wrinkled on his lap. He kept glancing at me, rubbing it every few seconds. In kindergarten, we'd learned about stranger danger and good touch, bad touch, which body parts were off limits. My 6-year-old brain screamed this was wrong. I felt sick and scared but didn't tell Ivy. Right then I thought he'd hurt us if I did. If Dad were there, I'd have said something. He was my hero, unbeatable. Instead, I slid my Happy Meal box in front of me to block my view. I had half my food left but lost my appetite. Ivy asked if I was full. I nodded. Usually, not finishing. Wasn't weird since I was tiny. She offered the play area, but I shook my head, whispering I wanted to go home. She cleared the table, and we left. At home, I was still freaked out, feeling like I'd puke. Ivy noticed. "What's wrong, Munchkin?" I burst into tears, spilling everything about the guy and what I saw. She didn't freak out, just hugged me, said it'd be okay, and told me to play in my room. She wiped my tears, gave me blueberry, Kool-Aid, and sent our dog in with me. Once I was out of earshot, she called McDonald's. He was still there. The manager said they'd handle it and call back. An hour later, they did. Cops showed up fast, arrested him. When they made him stand, his privates were still out. The manager offered Ivy a month of free Happy Meal coupons and said I could come back anytime. This happened when I was 13. I'm much older now. I lived in a safe, quiet neighborhood with a sketchy strip of 4 bars a block away, one on each corner. My parents, Hugo and Vera, were strict, needing to meet my friends and their parents. At 13, I was old enough for the local teen hangout. I won't name it to avoid giving away my location. It cost $3 to get in, open Fridays from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. I lived a quarter mile away in town. My route was well lit until the last 4 blocks with the bars. I'd walk and meet my best friend Suki halfway. She lived closer to the hangout. One night after it closed, I was walking home alone after splitting from Suki 6 blocks left. I noticed a guy across the street strolling slowly. Unsure if he was following, I tested him, stopping randomly to peer in shop windows using the glass to check. He stopped too. I did it a few more times. He kept stopping. Nearing the bars, I saw bikers with their motorcycles drinking and rowdy. I wasn't worried. They'd never bothered me in 3 weeks of this route. The guy kept pace until the bars, then turned back. I relaxed, skipped home, late, expecting trouble, but didn't tell my parents. Nothing happened, just my imagination, right? The next Friday, Suki offered her mom driving me home. I said no. I didn't want to lose my freedom, and he hadn't done anything. Earlier that week, a biker lady stopped me, kindly asking why I was out late alone, I explained. And after that, they'd wave but never hassle me. The following Friday, the guy crossed the street toward me. I froze. He wasn't scary looking. Older, 6 feet, lean, black hair, blue eyes. But it felt off. I backed up, nearing the bar with the bikers. He chased, saying, "I just want you to be my daughter." I cried, terrified, as he closed in fast. It's blurry after that. I screamed, "Get away!" Right by the bar, I yelled again. Someone grabbed me. Men shouted. I fought until a familiar voice said, "Stop, I've got you." It was a biker. I collapsed, sobbing. The others nabbed the guy. Someone called the cops. My parents picked me up. No punishment, just hugs, saying it'd be okay. I didn't know what happened to him. I thanked the bikers later. I hope he got help so he doesn't try that again. I work at a pizza joint inside a 24-hour gas station. It's tiny. We share a freezer and back room with the station cashier. The pizza spot opened 3 months ago. My boss only hired 3 college-age girls, including me. The first few days, the cashier I worked with most, Fareed, was great, offering free snacks and soda I'd take home. He was older, maybe early to mid-40s, with a thick accent and shaky English. Tall, 6'5", a foot and a half over us girls. Another cashier said he was Persian. It was fine until things got weird. One Saturday night, just us two, he invited me to a party at his place. I said no. He looked upset but dropped it. The next day he said, "I want to know about you." Scribbled his number and stuffed it in my backpack as I left. I smiled politely, said I was too busy, and didn't linger. It escalated. Every few days he'd ask me for coffee or dinner. Each "I'm busy" made him more annoyed. Honestly, he scared me. I couldn't flat out say, "No, I'm not interested," fearing he'd snap. This went on a month until the invites mostly stopped. I avoided him completely, he noticed. When we were in a room together, I'd tense up, silent, even locking the pizza shop door so he couldn't wander in. He tried once or twice, got mad when I wouldn't let him, passing stuff through the counter instead. I ride a scooter, so I can't lock up leaving at midnight. And he knew that. 2 months ago, I left one night he'd already gone. I felt paranoid, but since reading creepy stories 2 years back, always carried a knife. That night I opened it in my pocket, hand on it, scanning the near-empty lot. I saw his car parked a few spots away. Unsure if it was his, I laughed at myself for overreacting. I started my scooter to warm up. His car door swung open. I panicked, fumbling my helmet on. "Hey," he called. I didn't answer, just peeled, out. He stepped from the shadows a foot away, saying, "Kiss me," in a creepy tone, hand on my handlebar. I reached into my pocket. He flinched back, maybe thinking I had pepper spray. As he stepped away, I gunned it out of there. "Where are you going?" he yelled, furious. I didn't respond. He didn't touch me, so who cares, right? My foreign bosses wouldn't side with him, would they? After that, he stopped talking to me. No more awkward flirting. I relaxed until a few days ago he was alone with my coworker, Nia. He'd called her fat girl and ugly before, but I said nothing. When she grabbed milk from the freezer, he was there. As she turned, he grabbed her from behind, groped and kissed her. She was too scared to fight. I don't know much, she won't talk, but if I'd spoken up, maybe it wouldn't have happened. He got fired instantly and is headed back to Iran next week. I don't know how to help Nia or what to do, but I'd take your advice. If you just say I'm an idiot, I deserve it. I'm in my late 50s now. This happened when I was 10. My youngest kid told me about this site, so I figured you'd want to hear about someone I never want to see again. It was around my 10th birthday when life changed. We weren't rich, didn't have much. That birthday was the best because Mom, Lena, secretly saved up for my own bike. I was over the moon. No more borrowing my brother Milo's or riding double with a friend. Dad, Otis, worked hard and drank harder, usually drunk more than sober, rarely around. That was fine. Things were peaceful without him. When he came home at night, we knew to steer clear, stay quiet, and let him be. We lived on a long dirt road, in a small town's outskirts, a mile from our nearest neighbors, a big farm family. I was friends with their kids, our age, schoolmates. Their mom was sweet, always offering snacks. Their dad was the opposite of ours, never drank, yelled, or hit anyone. Around my birthday, Lena baked a big cake for me, Milo, and my sisters Ivy and Suki to share. After, she took me to the shed where she'd hidden the bike. I screamed, hugged her, kissed her, told her I loved her, and she was the best mom ever. I hopped on, riding up and down the road, pure joy, forgetting our usual hell. Later, biking. Back from the store for Lena, Otis's pickup roared past me toward home. I didn't want to go back, but sunset was near. What else could I do? Usually he came home right after work or super late after who knows where, so this was odd. Pulling into the yard, I heard yelling, Lena reasoning, Otis overpowering her voice, then a loud crash. Ivy and Suki were crying. Milo was at the neighbors. I didn't want to go in, but couldn't leave them alone with him. Another crash. Peeking through the window, I saw Otis trashing the place. Furniture tossed, lamps and pictures smashed. I tried sneaking in to get Ivy's attention, but he saw me, stormed over, grabbed my shoulders, and screamed in my face. Lena begged him to stop. He backhanded her. He'd seen me biking, knew it wasn't Milo's, and grilled Lena when he got home. She admitted hiding money for it. He lost it, whiskey breath hitting me as he yelled, convinced we were keeping more from him. And at 5 minutes, he'd wrecked everything. He threw me against a wall, stormed to the kitchen, and smashed my leftover cake against the back door. Ivy and Suki huddled in a corner. Lena sobbed, blood on her face. That was it, the worst I'd seen him. Scared, I ran, jumped on my bike, and sped to the neighbors. No phone at home, but they had one. I'd call the cops. As I left, Otis yelled after me. I kept going. His truck started. I glanced back. He was chasing me. Their house loomed ahead, his headlights closed in. I ditched the bike, tumbling into a ditch by the field, then ran across it. He shouted, but I didn't care. He turned back. I reached their door, banging. Their mom let me in, shocked at my sobbing, shaking state. I explained. She called her husband in. Milo and his friend came from the backyard. He bolted home. She called the cops. 10 minutes, no police. I begged their dad to drive me back. I didn't know what was happening. Halfway, we passed my crushed bike. Otis had run it over. I cried. For the bike I loved, and because I could have been on it. At home, his truck was gone. Milo had run back, grabbed a bat, and smashed Otis's kneecap as he raged. He got Ivy, Suki, and Lena to a bedroom. Otis crawled to his truck and fled. Cops arrived minutes after us, found him an hour later at a local bar. Easy, since he was a known drunk. They arrested him. The neighbors let us stay a few days while Lena planned our move to her sister's, hundreds of miles away. I never saw Otis again, didn't care. He didn't serve long. Calls and letters came after we settled, but Lena never went back. She divorced him a year later. We stayed with her sister until she saved enough for our own place. Life got better. This happened when I was about 4, maybe 1992 or 93. I've tried digging up details, maybe a news article since it was big in my town. My Nana, Ruth, was friends with an old guy named Jack. As a tiny kid, I only knew him as super nice. He gave us our first dog, but I heard he got mean when drunk, a typical angry drunk, though always kind to us. Jack had a feud with a neighbor down the street. At bars or parties, he'd rant about hating the guy, saying he'd shoot him someday with his pistol. His buddies always calmed him down. It had been years, so no one thought he'd do it. They called him Mad Jack, 'cause he'd flip, fast when boozed up, crazy streak. I didn't know that then, just saw him as a sweet old man. One morning, maybe 4 or 5 years old, I woke early, sitting with Ruth at the breakfast table. A knock came, odd, since few folks we knew were up that early. I stayed at the table as Ruth answered. It was Jack, sounding upset, scared, not just sad. I thought something awful spooked a big guy like him. Ruth sat him on the couch, got him coffee. I eavesdropped, pretending not to. She kept asking, "What's wrong, Jack? You're scaring me. Just tell me. We'll figure it out." From the kitchen, I heard him say, "I think I killed someone last night." Ruth didn't believe it, pressing for details. He didn't remember much, too drunk, but recalled walking to shoot the neighbor he hated, thinking he did it. Ruth got worried. Jack sobbed. I sat, hoping no one shooed me away. After a bit, Ruth said, "If you think you hurt someone, tell the police what you told me. They'll sort it." Jack feared he'd hurt someone, said he deserved jail, wouldn't run. Later that day, he was arrested. Turns out, drunk, he'd grabbed his gun, set out to kill his enemy, walked down his driveway, turned the wrong way, and shot a random local who didn't even know him. The guy answered his door. Jack fired, hitting his chest. He died on the spot.